Okay, I think we're ready to go. Sorry about that. I take full responsibility for having my own computer. But hopefully we've come up with a solution to get this going. I promised my translators I would not talk fast. I may have to now, but we'll see. Yes. Okay, I can't see my notes, so we'll see how this goes. But right now I'm going to demonstrate the extent of my Korean. So I know that grammatically some of that is wrong, but I blame Google Translate. This is my fifth time in Korea. I'm very honored to be here talking about a subject that I'm very passionate about. And I'd say while I'm here to talk about UX to SX, what I feel it's really about is the future of design and the future of business. So that makes me really excited. This is weird. Turn around and see me. Hi. Keep looking for my slides. They're over there. I've made a lot of Korean friends, which is why I know that this is funny. But moving into the content, there are two things that I think are relevant to this audience and that connects user experience to service experience, which is what SX stands for. One, there are more digital experiences. So we're no longer dealing with computers and sitting in front of them, and that's our only interaction. We have a lot of different ways to interact with services, both digitally and physically. This is some of the work we actually did for SKT last year. And then more digital experiences are integrated into other greater service ecosystems and combining with the physical. So it's no longer just digital services all by themselves. The lines between digital and physical are really blurred. And these services here, Groupon, which you may have heard of, it's a coupon-like service. Uber is a newer service in the United States that allows you to basically call a taxi/limo. Starbucks has mobile payments. Bank of America has photo check deposit. And the question for designers and businesses is, in this more complex landscape of digital service experiences, what do we need to put in place to make those happen? So let's look a little bit at the cloud content platform. Somebody uses maybe a 4G enabled camera they're then able to access that content on a tablet. They're then able to share that content with grandma on the television using a different app. They may use yet another app to put together a photo album based on the same content that they uploaded into the cloud. So all these things need to be in place in order for that kind of service experience to happen. With Groupon, you get an email. Email has the deal of the day. You might go check that out and see more information on the website and decide, yes, I'm going to buy this. But then you have to go to the store. You need to go to a physical environment to redeem your Groupon, show that to somebody, have a conversation around that, and then bring up your mobile to show, OK, yes, I have the Groupon. Can you scan it? Let's go. So this is a service experience. Uber, use your mobile app to say, hey, I want a car to pick me up. You get a text message that says, OK, your car will be there in 4 minutes. Your driver's name is John. He's driving a black Lexus. Cool. Vehicle shows up. You tell the driver where you want to go. There's a bottle of water in there. It's pretty nice. And then you don't have to pay, or you do have to pay, but you don't have to pay the driver because it's already set up. You just walk out of the vehicle. You don't have to tap anything. You don't have to exchange anything. It just shows up on your mobile phone. But all that is the service experience, not just one of those things. It's all that put together. Looking at Starbucks, same sort of situation. You might load it up with money. You go to the store, have to order your drink, scan, get your coffee, and then you see, okay, my payment's been deducted. But all these things are part of the experience, and all these things can be designed in conjunction with each other. The problem is that most organizations don't really think this way about experience. When they think about experience, they're thinking about the product primarily and the interactions that take place there. And that is where most UX designers are working. So I hope that gives you a little bit of context of where my head is and where I'm coming from when I'm thinking about service experience. It's a little bit above individual products and interfaces. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between UX and SX. And I apologize for introducing SX. I know people love acronyms. If you work for any large organization, you probably have way too many of them already. But I've found it necessary to start to try to distinguish between service experiences and digital product experiences in terms of where we're applying design. And the reason is because I believe that the skills and the methods that you use to design an interface are not the same that you would use to design the service architecture and the experiences that happen between products and across services. And I think right now, some people might argue that UX does encompass all those things, and I'm not sure that's that useful when we start to have conversations about what it is that we're designing, if there are these differences. So, two ways we might look at it, and in no way am I saying these are absolutely true. I'm presenting these things as a way to start a dialogue about this. But you have user interface versus service architecture. So the design of the screens and the interactions that go into digital products versus the architecture, the interactions that happen between different projects over a long period of time, the things that need to be in place to support the user interface experiences. Another way to think about it is one-off versus ecosystem. So a lot of the UX digital design work that we do is focused on individual products. A lot of our clients in the past have come to us and said, hey, we want you to redesign our website, or we want you to design this mobile app. And they have this idea of how it's going to fit into the larger ecosystem, but really they're looking at the specific interactions of a one-off product that they're asking us to design. In a service design or experience approach, you're looking more at that ecosystem of all the different things that I showed you before as part of those services that I drew. Another way is human versus human, business, and system. And the great thing if you are a designer is that the human part is in both. So if you're used to understanding and designing for people, you're still doing that when you're looking at service experience, but there's a greater focus on the system and the business operationally in order to make the service experience happen. When we're looking at service experiences, one of the things that we're finding is we are spending an equal amount of time trying to understand the business and its capabilities and its culture as we are the users who are going to use the services, because there is a relationship between how the business operates and is structured, and the business model, and what the end service experience will be. Another way might be tactical versus strategic. So if you're looking at a greater ecosystem, you have to be more strategic. Currently, most UX design is focused on tactical interaction problems, which is great. We need that. I'm not arguing that we shouldn't have a focus on digital experience. And another way to maybe think about that is transactional versus relationship. And this has really resonated with a number of our clients, and I think is important because when you're designing specific product and you're thinking about, okay, person comes into this, there's a flow, it's a transactional, they're gone, you can design that experience, and we're doing that really well. But when we think about, okay, they come into the product, they have an experience, they go away, they come to another product, they have that experience, they go away, they interact with one product, they have a conversation with one person, they interact with another, and if these things are all coordinated, you start to have more of a relationship with the service and the organization than if it's just transactional. And for our clients and our organizations, if we want customers to be more aligned with what we do and want to stay with us, having a relationship is going to be a stronger bond than a transactional experience. Another way to think about this, if we pull up, basically what I'm talking about is product experience versus service experience. So you can see on the left here, great experience between a person and a product, and then in the service, we're thinking of a larger ecosystem, orchestrating that, and orchestration is a big word in service experience, of all the pieces and parts. And again, in my view, we're going from single digital to multi-digital to digital that is embedded in the physical world. Another way to think about this is what I like to call levels of Zoom. So I think as was introduced, I went to Carnegie Mellon University. I studied, I have a master's in design with a concentration in interaction design. And one of the first things that we were taught is the design of a control. So a light switch, a button, what is the affordance? What does it tell you that how to use it? And what happens after you interact with that? What makes that a good experience? So you can start to sort of work your way up and say, okay, well, what's a good experience with a control? What's a good experience with a set of controls, which might be a feature? What's a good experience with the product? And I think the stuff that's colored here in orange is primarily where UX design has been focused, of creating great experiences in these levels of Zoom. And where I see design going is further up, starting in service, moving into organization, looking at how people interact across services. So, SK Planet has a number of services. How do people navigate and interact between those? What are the expectations that they have? And how should you engage and align all these services so that you're having a consistent experience that helps build that relationship with your customers? The more pieces you have, the more you're going to need a good way to approach strategy, planning, and design of your service. And for that, we have service design. How many of you have heard of service design? Few brave souls. Oh, sorry, the translation probably has to catch up. And I was waiting for it. I don't know if what I'm saying is funny. I have to wait a few seconds to see. So service design takes the craft and the methods of design and applies them to the overall definition and orchestration of service experiences. Now, if you're a designer, you might look at that and go, okay, yeah, I mean, that's great, that's what I do. And to a degree, I think you are correct, and it's one of the reasons why people in UX with a UX background can sometimes easily transition to service design. But what we're seeing that is really different is that you're also examining the operations, the culture, and the structure of the organization for its impact on the service experience. And this is something that is sort of eye-opening to a lot of organizations, because this is not how they think about designing for experience. They're thinking that it's really at the end. It's when people are interacting with something tangible, and it doesn't start further upstream. Things like your business model, things about the way your culture operates can impact how your stuff gets designed and what kind of experience people have in the end. It's a reason why it's very difficult for organizations to copy other successful organizations. If it was really easy for everybody to copy what Apple did, then we'd all have very equal service experiences with our service ecosystems. But it's not, because a lot of it is about your organization and about your culture, and not just, okay, here's the end product, and here's how it works. So I'm not going to go into all of the methods and tools of service design, but I want to show you a few things that I think are relevant. This is a journey map, and I'm not really going to go into the details of this, but essentially what we're doing is we're using tools to help communicate and visualize what the experience of people is like over time. And as you can see here, it's broken up into stages. It does happen over time. It's got multiple touch points, people, things that are happening. It alludes a little bit to the experience that happens at a different phase. Something goes circular, some's pretty straightforward, some might be meandering. And we use these things to have more strategic conversations with the business about planning for experience and investment in the right parts of the experience if we have a better view of the overall. Another thing we do is create stories. This is something that UX and interaction designers do a lot, but we do this before we dive into interfaces and dive into products. Because we want to make sure we really understand what kind of experience we want to enable, and we want to have, again, be able to communicate that with the business and maybe change things about our assumptions before we get into detailed design. Sensitive. Service Blueprint is another tool that we use, and it's an operational tool that shows both the experience that we want to happen, but also what needs to be in place operationally, in the systems, in the back end, that can make that experience happen. The way it's organized is the stuff in the white and above is the things that the customer can see, and the things that happen below are the magic. But when we're using these tools, what we're doing in order to fill in a lot of the magic, we need to work with people that understand that stuff. So developers, engineers, process engineers. If you're a process engineer, this might look a lot like a process map. It's similar, but it builds upon that, and it adds a more human dimension as well. These tools have been around for quite a while, and what we're doing as designers is really evolving them. So this is a service blueprint posted in Harvard Business Review in 1984. It's pretty simple, looks very engineering, but the idea was the same. How do we actually understand and plan for service experience? Designers, however, are advancing that. So this is a service blueprint that was done for IBM. And what the designers have added in terms of dimension is not just operationally what needs to happen, but also what is the experience and how important are each of those experiences along the path, again, so that the organization can make better decisions about where to invest as they go forward. This was also printed in Don Norman's more recent book, Living with Complexity, which I think is acknowledgement of we are living in a more complex world. We do need different approaches and different tools to deal with that. And he recognized this as a tool that can help. While I didn't go over a lot of the tools, if you are interested looking at more of the actual methods and shorter pieces of case studies, if you want to do the work, servicedesignTools.org is a very good resource. Additionally, this book, This is Service Design Thinking, is a really good foundational service design book. And I don't just say that because I contributed to it. I actually think it's good. But there are a number of other service design books that are coming out that I know of. And I've been talking about doing another one myself. So shifting a little bit from service experience and UX and SX, I want to talk a little bit about what this means on the business side. So 2 weeks ago, I was in Paris for the Service Design Network Conference, and the director of the Paris Rail Transit, which is the RATP, had this to say, which I thought was really interesting and relevant for service experience and what it means for business and organizations. Service design is designing the bus lines. That's how they thought about it. You know, we don't think about why someone goes from A to B. So what I love about this is in these 2 sentences, does this work? You have in the beginning basically how the business thinks about operationalizing the service. Okay, we need buses, we need them to run on time, we need stops, and we're done. We've designed the service. On the other side, you have maybe a more designer viewpoint. It's like, well, why are people riding the bus? What do they need? And if you combine those things, I think that's really where you get good service experience. When you take the operational and you take the design mind and you combine those together to create something even better. And unfortunately, right now, I see a lot of it happening very far apart. So operationally, here's the idea. What we're going to do, well, okay, that idea is not going to work because that's not really what people want. And it's more of a battle when really they need to be working together. Another interesting graphic, this was done by my CEO, Brandon Schauer. He was looking at and trying to understand who does service design currently. Because we have services, they've been designed, they exist. They may not be as good as we want them to be. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. But what I think is interesting about this graphic, although it says completely unscientific, he actually did a bit of homework. He just doesn't have actual numbers to prove this. But what is really interesting is the organization part. And I think what that represents is that we often design in our different silos, doing different projects, and we're not really orchestrating towards a common vision. Our ideas don't connect with each other, and the experience in the end for the person using it just happens. So that's what it means by the organization. They're doing all sorts of things, and then it just happens. Well, I don't think that's a good approach for designing service experiences. Don't let that happen. Don't let the experience just happen. Design it. Another really interesting talk 2 weeks ago was by this guy, Nabil Hamdi, who's the author of a book called Small Change. He works for the World Bank, and he travels around looking at civic problems and how to design for them. And I thought this was a really good message, and again, that is really relevant to service design and service experience. If you want to do something big, start with something small that has long-term strategic impact. Now, the challenge with that is, how do you know what small thing to start with and how it relates to the strategic whole? And again, this is where I see service design and service experience approach playing a really strong role, because you're both defining the overall systemic ecosystem, the vision, and then you're making decisions about, okay, well, we can't do all this at once, but the smartest thing to do in this sea of things that we could do in order to achieve this vision is right here, and we understand how that builds. So how do you make sure how do you make a good small bet? That's a question we might ask. What we advocate, and what I've sort of been saying as I've gone along here, is that there needs to be more collaboration of business engineering and design at a more strategic level earlier on in the design process. Not even, maybe that's even incorrect, because typically we don't think of the design process happening very early on. It's really later. But this is something that we are working with our clients, and we're seeing happening within organizations in the United States. They're recognizing that they have these different experiences that are happening in different parts of the organization, and they have different levels, different people that can contribute to that, not just designers. How do we bring them together to move faster, make quicker decisions, fail sooner, and be successful? Most organizations aren't set up that way. Typically, this is an abstract of how we see design work happening, is that you have some sort of business strategy. That turns into a plan. That plan creates projects. Now that you have projects, you can bring in designers, and you can get those projects done. Problem with that is that, again, as I was saying, if the design part, which is often the more human part, is left to the end, that could be a problem. You might find things out that aren't related to the strategy, and what we want to do is figure out things early. So, as I said, what we recommend and what we're helping our clients achieve and seeing happening in other organizations is the blending of business strategy and service design, and using that as a way to plan projects and ultimately get to the detailed design. That may be another way to think about service experience to user experience. And what I like about this model potentially is that if you do have design working at these two ends, you can have a bit of a feedback loop. And you can have better conversations about what is going to work and what people really want and really need that connects to the business strategy and the business model and the operations. Another way to think about this is inside out versus outside in. So this is a model that one of my colleagues came up with a while ago, but typically organizations start with, what are our systems, what are our capabilities? Then they go to process and procedures. That turns into touch points. That becomes interactions, and that becomes experiences. And again, that's sort of letting the experience happen versus really designing it and thinking about it. So the outside-in view would be the reverse of that. Start with the experience first, then figure out what we need to make that experience happen. There's a book that came out recently by Carrie Bodine, a friend of mine, and who works at Forrester and writes about service design. She's captured a lot of how different companies are trying to tackle the complexity of designing service experiences. But maybe it's not inside out or outside in. Maybe it's inside, outside, in, where you've got this dialogue of designing the vision and then working with operations to understand what is capable and going back and forth. And again, if you have teams in place that can do that, you can do that rapidly, you can do that smartly, you can place better small bets. So a couple predictions. One, I think service experience, service design will become a thing. I don't know exactly what, but I strongly believe there's something there. There's a space for design to play a role that is currently not playing, and it's going to be helpful for business, and it's going to be helpful for people. And secondly, that there will be teams created, and I mean, it's not even a prediction, like we're doing it now. But I think it will happen more and more. The questions I want to leave you with is, if this is going to happen, how do we structure organizations for service experience? I don't have all the answers. My firm doesn't have all the answers. It's something that design and business is going to have to figure out together. Playing off a little bit of what was said earlier this morning, I don't think that service experience is an evolution of UX. I think to really apply it in the way that we're seeing it, it's a revolution of business and service design. It's really looking at the way the businesses have been structured and organized and operated for a very long time, challenging Taylorism and the ideas of Ford, and bringing design in at a different place to build better experiences. And if we do this, I think we can make our services and our planet more human, and I think we should start doing that. Thank you.